Now, if you make sure you have the latest notes, have got some important footnotes, which have just been put on the Telegram. Yeah? Remember, to know the latest version, look at the very last line of the whole file. There are computerized dates there. Make sure you have the latest date, which is in fact today's date. Today we're going to study the Anuruddhā Upakkilesa Sutta. Now notice this word, it's very interesting, Anuruddhā. Okay, Anuruddhā is a very rare Pali word. Usually it will be Anuruddhā, which is called a stem word. In other words, that's the word which is indexed in the dictionary. Here, Anuruddhā is plural. So you actually translate literally as Anuruddhas. But we don't do it that way. This is Pali idiom. Later on, you will notice this word appearing in the sutta. This is the word used by the Buddha to address the three people with Anuruddha. So Anuruddha and Bagu and Kimbila, in other words, three monks, right? But we have a similar example in the word Sariputta, okay? When the Buddha is addressing Sariputta and Moggallana. So the more senior person is given the name in the plural. So it is a very interesting, rare Pali form, we call it. So you can see in the translation, the discourse on mental impurities, that's Upakkilesa, to Anuruddha and two others. Okay. Now notice the word impurities. The usual word for impurity, or we call it defilement, would be kilesa. And those are negative, they're unwholesome. Here, they're called upakkilesa. So it's a kind of meaning it has to do with more the mental distractions. In fact, upakkilesa here is a synonym for nivarana, that is mental hindrance. Whatever prevents your meditation from focusing, right? And this is from Majjhima 128. 128. Yeah? The theme, spiritual friendship and mental development. So here we see the Buddha as a human teacher caring for the Sangha, but then there are some monks in the Sangha who actually don't respect the Buddha. So instead of quarreling with them, the Buddha leaves them alone and he goes on his own retreat in the Parileya forest with the famous story of the elephant and the monkey taking care of him. Okay, so this is before that. And then the Buddha before going to Parileya forest meets with a monk who is practicing solitary meditation, and then three others, Anuruddha and his friends, and he gives them instructions. So we see how the Buddha cares for the monks. And the Buddha also talks about meditation, some finer points. For those of you who do regular meditation will find this part interesting. So the background of this sutta is of Kosambi. It happened after the Kosambi incident. The details of the Kosambi incident is not given in this sutta because the sutta focuses on teaching the Dhamma. But the Vinaya gives us some details about the nature of the problem, the quarrel between two groups of monks over some minor issue. If I remember well, some monk forget to top up the water in the toilet after using it, and then they were quarreling. There was this big quarrel. The monks refused to settle the issues. They were like, what do you call that? Organizing all kinds of Sangha act and expelling one another and finding fault with one another. And the Buddha tried to correct them, but they wouldn't listen. Okay, so this is the kind of background, and we see what happens from there. Okay, let's look at the sutta now. Okay, before that, you can see on page 185, the table 8. Table 8, further down, yeah, a bit more. Yes, this is the one. Now here, table 8 is what's called a concordance. Concordance, that means we have here 4 events showing how they run parallel to each other as recorded in 4 different documents. The same event mentioned in 4 different documents. The first one is Divinaya. You find there's lots of details there. All right. And then the second is the Kosambiya Sutta, M48. Here, the Buddha talks about the 4 principles of cordiality or friendship. And then you have our sutta here, Anuruddhā Upakkilesa Sutta, M128. And then the last one is where the Buddha spends time in the forest, Parilaya Sutta. So you can see some of the events are repeated and some are mentioned in certain sutta, but not in other suttas. So this is how the sutta compilers combine the events and then put in the Buddha's teaching for our benefit. Right? So from this table, you have an idea of the sequence of events. Right. So remember, when you look at the sutta, this sutta is like a little window. Right. We get some teachings Buddha give to us, and there is always a focus in the teaching. And so the focus this time is on spiritual friendship and meditation. Right. So if you have time, just look at this table, and then if you're curious, just look up whatever interests you. Okay. All right. Now let's look at the translation itself. The next page. Anuruddhā Upakkilesa Sutta, the discourse on mental impurities to Anuruddhā and 2 others. Here we can see others or 2 others. M1 to 8. Thus have I heard that one time the Blessed One was staying in Gosita's park near Kosambi. Now, Kosambi is located in the far west of the northern Gangetic plain. Now, imagine the river Ganges, there's this plain, very rich, flat land there, and all the big cities, major Indian cities are in that area, this huge, big area. And far west, in other words, near Punjab, you have this place, city called Kosambi. So it's quite way out, and to the west, the Brahmins are stronger than in the so-called middle country. And here you find the monks also quite quarrelsome. All right, so this is Kosambi. Verse 2. Now at that time, the monks at Kosambi had taken to quarreling and arguing, drowned in dispute, attacking each other with a weapon of words. Then a certain monk approached the Blessed One. Okay, this is a concerned monk. Having approached, he saluted the Blessed One and stood at one side. Standing thus at one side, the monk said this to the Blessed One. Bhante, the monks here in Kosambi have taken to quarreling and arguing, drowned in dispute, attacking each other with a weapon of words. It would be good, Bhante, if the Blessed One would go to those monks out of compassion. In other words, counsel those monks, tell them not to fight. And the Buddha agreed. Okay. The Blessed One consented with his silence. So this is again the tradition of the Buddha. So if he agrees, he'll be silent. Only when he does not agree, he will say, oh, I won't be here, I'll be elsewhere, something like that. He will give an answer. 4. Then the Blessed One approached those monks. Having approached, he said to them, Enough, bhikshus, let there be no quarrel, no arguing, no strife, no dispute. Now you see there is a space after this paragraphing, because in 4.2 you find when this was said, a certain monk. Now this is a bad monk. Okay, this certain monk is called Adhamma monk. The commentaries call him Adhamma. In other words, he has no dhamma. He said this to the Blessed One. Let it be, Bhante. Let the Blessed One, the Lord of Dhamma, be unconcerned, devoted to the pleasant dwellings, abidings here and now, Bhante. We are the ones who will be responsible for this quarrel, arguing, strife, and dispute. So this is quite rude words, and he's telling off the Buddha. So notice here, you see some of these monks don't respect the Buddha. Okay, this is a bit later, quite early in the Buddha's time actually. So in other words, that there were a lot of monks at the time who were not yet arahats. Okay, so they were in Kosambi. So here, notice this monk uses the word unconcerned. Here means don't care, don't worry about us. Leave us alone. We'll take care of our own problems, right? So he doesn't respect the teacher, right? So 3 times the Buddha admonishes them. 3 times this monk counters the Buddha. So you can imagine how rude and how overconfident they are, right? So back to number 4 at the top, the Buddha says those words, enough bhikshus and so on. And I told you there is this space, this paragraph breaking. In other words, the Buddha gives them some teachings. And one of the most famous teachings is about a story of King Digiti, and his son Digavu. Okay, Digavu. Okay, Digavu means long life. So it's a kind of like a Jataka story. It's a story about not showing hatred. It's a beautiful story. I think there is time, so I could quickly tell you this story. This story is found in the Vinaya, okay, account of this episode. So the Buddha told the monk, don't quarrel, and he said, this is long ago, there was this king during the time of Brahmadatta. So in other words, it's a kind of Jataka story. It says this king is a good king, Digiti, but then this Brahmadatta was not a good king at that time. So he managed to conquer this king Digiti and held him like hostage, if you like. So he's left on his own. Although he's not killed, he's not free to do whatever he likes. So this king one day found out his wife is pregnant. His wife could have a child. So he knew that if King Brahmadatta found out about this Brahmadatta will kill the queen and then kill the child. So he sent the wife into hiding to live and give birth to this child, and let someone else take care of the child secretly, so that the child is safe. So this is a typical story about royalty and royal palace intrigue. So to cut the long story short, the King Brahmadatta one day decided to execute King Digiti. Now, by that time, the son is already quite big, an adult, a prince. Okay, so a big crowd assembled, and this king is led with the Sutta, the Vinaya says, with the beating of a rough sound of the drum. Okay, in other words, it's an execution drum. Okay, so it's taken for execution. Now, as the king walks, passing the crowd, he saw his son in the crowd. Now, he cannot talk to him because he knows then the guards will know that it's his son. So he shouts out loudly, and everyone can hear, and the son can hear. He says, do not look long, do not look short. Okay, so, and only the prince understood this meaning. There's always this kind of talking in quotes in the stories in Jataka, in ancient Indian stories. So the king said a few other things, but this is the key word: don't look long, don't look short. Okay, live compassionately, kindly, and so on. So the prince heard this. Okay, he remained very quiet. Of course, he was very sad. His father was killed, and he cried and so on. Then he went on and he planned something. He planned to, in a sense, avenge his father's name. So he went to the palace, the story goes, by becoming a servant in one of the humblest position, that is taking care of horses, shoving the dung away and so on, things like that. So in that way, he will not be, the king will not be suspicious of who he is really. So he went on doing that, and he did his job well, and he got promoted higher, and so on. Until in the end, the king noticed that he's very good with weapons and he is strong and so on. So trusted him. And all this while, he's very calm, he's behaving himself. And so he became very close to the king. Remember that this king killed his father, if you remember. So you can see this dramatic story. You can say, wow, okay, so now the son is going to kill the king and then take back his position. In fact, he was going to do that. So one night as the king was sleeping, and then this prince Digawu, he was beside the king, and he took out his sword. He wanted to kill the king because the king killed his father. Then he remembered his father's word, do not do long, do not look short. And he kept his weapon, and the king woke up in terror. So the king said, what are you doing? You know? And again, here to cut the story short, the prince told the king who he really was. And of course, the king was terrified. And the prince said, don't worry, I'm not going to kill you because of my father's instructions. Then the king asked, yeah, I remember your father was shouting very loudly, don't look long, don't look short. What does that mean? You know? Then the prince said, okay, by don't look long, my father meant don't think of hating thoughts too long about people who have harmed you and hurt you. Let it go, let those thoughts go. And then what did he mean by don't look short? The king asked. Oh, said the prince, it means don't be quick to get angry with friends. Don't get short-tempered with friends. Friends are important. Don't forget them, basically. So the prince said something like, I forgive you, so I'm not going to hurt you. So, but remember, it's what you've done. So the king was very impressed and very proud. I'm very impressed of the fact, right? And of course, he's very happy his life was spared. And here the happy ending is he gave his daughter to Prince Digawu. So you have this princess and prince married together, and you can know now the happy ending because since the king doesn't have a son, he has only a daughter, and the daughter marries the prince, and it's just nice. They become the future rulers of that country. So this is a story the Buddha told those quarreling monks. He said, look, in this story you find even this king, and this prince, he spared the killer of his own father. So you should be kind to each other and don't quarrel. But despite this beautiful story, this monk still insists, I'm right, you're wrong, and so it went on like that. So after the Buddha has given such instruction and the monks don't listen, so it's time that the Buddha goes away. So there you are. So this is the next part. The Buddha goes into solitary retreat further down. Okay, let's go down now a bit more. Down the passage. Section 5. Then in the morning, the Blessed One, having dressed and taking his robe and bowl, entered Kosambi for alms. So this is the day after the Buddha admonished the monks and they refused to listen. Then having gone to Kosambi for alms, having returned from his alms round after his meal, set his lodging in order. Now this sentence, this phrase especially is interesting. Set his lodging in order. So this is a habit the Buddha has, and he makes sure the monks to practice this way. They fold up their mat and make sure their kuti, the quarters are clean and orderly, right? So he's going to leave that place. So he took his bowl and robe, and while this part is again very interesting, and while standing, he uttered these stanzas. Okay, so here we are. We have 10 stanzas here. I mean, to read through the stanza, maybe say a few things here and there, and after that, I will explain why he was standing and other matters related to this. Okay, Okay, now section 6, this is the first verse. Now I didn't number the verses, but anyway, there are 10 if you count them. Putu sadho samajano na balo kochi manyata sangasming bijamanasming nanyang biyo amanyarung. Many other voices, when many voices are shouting at once, no one considers himself a fool. Although the Sangha is being split, no one thinks he is at fault, right? So this summarizes what happened. No? Now notice on the right-hand side, you have other references besides this in the Majjhima Nikaya M128. You find this verse also appears in Jataka number 428, the first verse. And of course in the Vinaya, volume 1, page 349. That means it's a popular verse, ancient verse. Next verse, 6.2. Parimutta pandita bahasa vacha gochara bhanino yavichanti mukha yamang yena nita natang vidu. They have utterly forgotten wise speech. Speakers of words trapped by words. They mouth away, speaking as they wish. No one knowing what is leading them on. Right? So here they're caught up in their own karmic habits, if you like, negative karmic habits through words. You notice this what happens. People quarrel, they just go on talking to hurt each other. Right? And nobody really knows what they're talking. So this is the sad thing, yeah? So here again, you notice the reference you have in Udana, chapter 5, Sutta 9, and then Jataka number 4 to 8 again, right? In fact, you find this verse also appear in the same Jataka, because the Jataka also related to this story. And again in the Vinaya, which is related to this story. Now next, 6.3 is a very famous verse found in the Dhammapada also. It's called the victim verse. Now there are two verses, 6.3, 6.4. One negative, one positive. Okay, this comes from the chapter of twins meaning twin verses. One negative, one positive. And the negative verse, akochimang awadimang ajinimang hasime ye chatang upanayhanti werang tesang nasamanti. Now you notice here, this is a shloka. There are 8 syllables in every verse. 4 syllables times 8, that's 32 syllables. So everything is put very nicely. He abused me, he struck me. Notice this is a quote. The person is thinking, he abused me, he struck me. He defeated me, he robbed me. Close quote. In those who harbor such thoughts, their hatred will never be quelled. Right, so here the Buddha is saying, if you think yourself as a victim, you'll never be happy. So just let go of those thoughts. Right, so here, Dhammapada number 3, and then in the partner Dhammapada is verse number 5. And again, it appears in the Jataka and the Vinaya. So this is the negative one. So if you think of yourself as a victim, you will remain a victim. This is very interesting advice the Buddha gave in counseling. Now the positive one, 6.4. Akochimang awadimang, ajinimang ahasime, yechatang no painahanti, werang te su pasamanti. All right. Now you notice here the almost the only one different word is, now this is upanayhanti, right? It harbors such thoughts. Here is na upanayhanti. The na in front means not. Okay. In fact, it'd be good to put an apostrophe there. Yeah? So he abused me, he struck me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who harbor not such thoughts, their hatred will be quelled. Right? So you won't feel like a victim. It's not that you don't mind being hurt, it's just that you know that's the case, but you're not going to keep on thinking about it until it affects you negatively. Right? And then 6.5 is a related, very famous verse. Here again, you see these verses, they follow as a set in the Dhammapada also. Yeah? 6.5. Nahi verena verani samantida kudachanam averena cha samanti esa dhammo sanantano. Never is hate by hate ever quell in this world. By non-hate, it is quell. This is the timeless truth. All right. So this is translated according to the Pali. There is a English Buddhist hymn here. Hate is not overcome by hate, by love alone is quell. This is a truth of ancient date. Today still unexhaled, right? So it's a free translation. It's a song. But here you follow the Pali. So here notice is Dhammapada DH5, right? But in the Patna Dhammapada, it is number 253. And Jataka and Vinaya, you have the same in the same series. Now, 6.6. Parechana vijananti. Vijananti is in the plural, notice. Maya metta yamamase. Yecha tata vijananti tato samanti medaga. And the others, the foolish, do not recognize that we here restrain ourselves. Yet others, the wise, who recognize this, for them the quarrels are quelled. So maybe the second line should read that we here should restrain ourselves. No? So in other words, they're monks, so they should restrain themselves. But here they forget. So the quarrels are not settled. So this again, Dhammapada number 6. Okay, let's look next one. 6.7. Atichina panahara gawasa dhana harino ratang vilumpamananang tesampi hoti sangati kasma tumha kanosia. You notice 5 lines. Breakers of bones, takers of life, robbers of cattle, horses, and wealth, those pillaging the country, even they can work together. Why can you not do so too? Right? So here's an irony, right? So basically the Buddha is saying even thieves have honor, even thieves, work together, respect each other. Why can't you do that, right? So it's a kind of wry humor of the Buddha here. The Buddha is being very subtle, telling the monks, when you quarrel like this, you even know better than the thieves. The thieves are better than you. Unless they don't quarrel, they work together. All right. Now, the Buddha is in a more somber mode, in renunciation mode, 6.8. Sache labeta nipakang sahayang sading charang sadhu vihari dirang abhibuya sabani parisayani chareya tenatamano satima. If one finds a sensible companion with whom to fare, who abides well and wise, then overcoming all dangers, one should wander with him in joy and mindfulness. Right? So the Buddha says, if you have a good friend, he's kind and good, then it's wonderful to have him to fare along together, practice Dhamma together. So that's the positive one. Now we come to the negative one. Here again, you see Dhammapada 3 to 8, 3 to 9, they are consequential, they are sequential. Now the negative one. So positive first and then negative. 6.9 is the negative one. Noche labeta nipakang sahayang. Sading charang sadhu vihari dirang. Rajawa ratang vijitang pahaya. Eko care matanga ranyewa nago. If one cannot find a sensible companion, a fellow farer, or one to fare with, who abides well and wise, then like a king abandoning a conquered kingdom, one should wander alone like an elephant in the Matanga forest, right? So This famous elephant, of course, probably is the same one that took care of the Buddha in the Paralaya forest. No? So here the Buddha says, if you cannot find a good friend, a kind, wonderful friend, you might as well just be alone. There's no point getting into trouble. So here again, you have this advice on renunciation. Then the last verse, the 10th verse. Ekasa charita seyo nati bala sahayata eko charena chapapani kaira aposuko matangaranye wa nagoti. Better it is to fare alone. There is no companionship with the foolish. Walk alone and do no evil, unconcerned like an elephant in a Matanga forest. Right? So you can see the last 3 verses, they actually form a set. In fact, all the 10 verses are connected with this idea of doing the right thing. Otherwise, it's better to be alone. So remember the Buddha standing alone and he's saying these verses. So in other words, if we look at this sutta, it is clear that these verses are the Buddha's soliloquy. Soliloquy, that means he's speaking to himself, a reflection. I prefer this interpretation because who is he talking to here? He's talking to us today, right? He when he says this thing, although he's standing alone reflecting, he's talking to himself, but he knows this will be recorded because he's going to tell Ananda about it, and Ananda will relate it. And now it's recorded because of Ananda. So the Buddha is telling us, the Buddha is teaching us all these 10 verses. So it's beautiful in this sense. One of the commentaries say that, oh, the Vinaya says that the Buddha is standing and addressing the monks. The Buddha usually won't do that. The Buddha will sit down and teach the monks. Okay. Again, it's possible that the Buddha may have mentioned all these verses after telling the story, the Jataka story of King Digiti and Digawu, and then mention these verses. We're not sure. Okay, but the important thing is these verses are here, and they are very beautiful, and they reflect on being alone. So it makes sense that the Buddha would say this, standing alone, is going to leave. So these are like farewell verses, if you like. He's going to go into solitary retreat. So in other words, here we see the end of the first part of the story. And the Buddha is leaving Kosambi. He's going to travel away. He's going to go into one village, the first village, and he's going to meet a monk called Bagu there, who is doing solitary meditation. And later he will go to another place after that, and he will meet the Anuruddhā and 3 other monks. Okay. Now, since this is just nice as a chapter, I'm going to stop here for a while, and then after the break, we will continue with the Buddha goes into solitary retreat. The Buddha at Balakalona Karagama. He meets Bagu. Okay, section 7. So let's take a short 5-minute break, just nice. We'll come back at 9 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Piya. We'll take a short break. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can continue. Let's look at verse 7. So, right. Now, look at the subtitle, the paragraph subtitle, Balakalona Karagama. It is the name of a village. Okay, it's a village of a salt maker. The name is Balaka. Okay. So we know even in those days, people made salt, right? And Bagu is living outside the village. Then the Blessed One, having uttered these verses while standing, went to Balakalona Karagama, the Balaka salt maker's village. Now at that time, the Venerable Bagu, he was a Sakyan monk. He was residing in Balakalona Karagama. The Venerable Bagu saw the Blessed One coming in the distance, and seeing the Blessed One, he prepared a seat and water for washing the feet. This is the usual respect to show to the teacher. Then the Blessed One, having washed his feet and so on, right? So he sat down and washed his feet, right? Then the Venerable Bagu, having saluted the Blessed One, sat down at one side. When the Venerable Bagu was seated thus at one side, the Blessed One said this to him. So notice that there's a preliminary welcoming of the guest, the teacher, and once the teacher's comfortable and ready, then either the teacher or the student will speak. Now here you see the Buddha speaking quite normal words. I hope you find it bearable, Bhikshu. I hope you are able to keep going. I hope you have no trouble with alms food. Right, so it's a typical way monks greet each other when they meet after a long time in the suttas. No? And then the Bagu replies, "It's bearable, Blessed One," or "It's bearable, Lord. I'm able to keep going, Blessed One. I have no trouble with alms food one day." Then the Blessed One, having inspired, roused, and gladdened the Venerable Bagu with the Dhamma talk, rose from his seat and left, heading towards Pachina Wangsa Megadaya, the eastern bamboo deer park. Okay, so that there are there are lots of deer parks in India. So this is the one called the eastern bamboo. So notice the Buddha meets with Bagu here, and there's no teaching recorded here because Bagu progresses quite well in this meditation. There's no problem, so that there's no record of any long teachings given. The long teaching comes in the next section. Pachina Wangsadaya, Anuruddhā, Nandiya, and Kimbila, the 3 monks. Verse 8. Now at that time, the Venerable Anuruddhā, the Venerable Nandiya, and the Venerable Kimbila were staying in Pachina Wangsadaya, the eastern bamboo park. Okay, Pachina means eastern, Wangsa means bamboo, and Daya park. All right, something rather odd happens here. There is a park keeper in this place. It's probably a grove rather than the park. That means somebody owns it and it's kind of well taken care for. So you have a park keeper there. The park keeper saw the Blessed One coming from afar. Notice this is not a monk, so he's a layman. Seeing the Buddha, he said this to the Blessed One: "Great recluse, do not enter this park. There are 3 sons of family dwelling here, engaged in desiring for their own good. Do not disturb them." All right, so there's very conscientious park keeper. He said that there are monks meditating here, don't disturb them. Now, obviously here, the park keeper could not recognize the Buddha, right? And this is very important evidence. It shows that the Buddha doesn't look different from the other monks. He's not like a superhuman height. He's not big size, like you see the tooth, the false tooth, which is exhibited in the museum in Singapore. No? So he's an ordinary person, and this park keeper couldn't recognize him. He says, please don't disturb those 3 monks. They're meditating. But then, not far away, Anuruddhā hears them. Section 9. The Venerable Anuruddhā heard the park keeper speaking to the Blessed One. See, how did he hear this? Because the forest is very quiet and no one talks there. So once someone speaks, you can hear. All right, it's a peaceful day. Hearing this, he said this to the park keeper: "Friend park keeper, do not obstruct the Blessed One. He is our teacher, the Blessed One, who has come." All right. Then the Venerable Anuruddhā approached the Venerable Nandiya and Venerable Kimbila. Having approached them, he said this to the Venerable Nandiya and the Venerable Kimbila. Come out, Bhante, our teacher, the Blessed One, has come, right? So he quietly announces to them the Buddha's arrival. Then the Venerable Anuruddha, the Venerable Nandiya, and the Venerable Kimbila went out to meet the Blessed One. One took the Blessed One's bowl and robe, one prepared a seat, one set up water for washing the feet. So this is normal procedure. So that there's a group of monks, and so they will do it together, different duties. The Blessed One sat down on the prepared seat. Having sat down, he washed his feet. Then the three venerables saluted the Blessed One and sat down at one side. So this water for washing feet is very important. Remember, those monks in the Buddha's time walk barefoot all along the way. So the road is dusty and so on. So once they arrive at the monks' quarters, one of the first things they would do is wash their feet. Sitting thus at one side, the Blessed One said this to the Venerable Anuruddha. I hope you three find it bearable, Anuruddha. Notice again here the plural, Anuruddha, meaning the other two monks are also addressed. I hope you are able to keep going. I hope you have no trouble with alms food. The Anuruddha replies, it is bearable, Blessed One. We are able to keep going, Blessed One. We have no trouble with alms food, Bhante. Then comes the teaching. So this first part of the teaching, the Buddha talks about spiritual friendship. Anuruddha, I hope you are all dwelling well in concord. You're all dwelling in concord, in mutual joy, without disputing, blending like milk and water, looking at each other with kind eyes. Okay? Now this is a very beautiful phrase, the highlighted words. No? They are living together as dear friends, mixing together like milk and water. Like opposite will be water and oil. Right? So it's like milk and water mixing together. And looking at each other with Piya Chakku, kind eyes. Right? And this is a wonderful thing to even think of. Right? You have metta and then you show it in your eyes. And Anuruddha replies, certainly, Bhante, we are all dwelling in concord, in mutual joy, without disputing, blending like milk and water, looking at each other with kind eyes. And then the Buddha asks, how do you do this? Now, how do you live together in fellowship in this way? Okay, so now each of the three monks would give the same reply, actually. 12.2. Now Anuruddha replies, Bhante, here I think thus. It is a gain for me. It's a great gain for me that I am dwelling with some companions in the holy life. I, Bhante, towards these venerable ones, keep up acts of loving kindness through deed, both openly and privately. Right? So here, Anuruddha says, I do deeds out of loving kindness, openly and also when on my own. I keep up acts of loving kindness through speech, both openly and privately. And keep up acts of loving kindness through the mind, both openly and privately. Body, speech, and mind, right? So all the three dots of action, there is loving kindness. So this is true friendship. Loving kindness is shown in every way, in all the karmic ways. No? All right, further down. Dear Bhante, I think thus. Why should I not set aside what I wish to do and instead do what these venerables wish to do? Then, Bhante, I set aside what I wish to do and instead do what these venerables wish to do. It seems, Bhante, that we are of different bodies, but of one mind. So this is a beautiful example, not spoken by the Buddha in this case. Notice, it's spoken by the Buddha's monks, by Anuruddha. He says, I'm very fortunate to have such good friends. Now, he is a very loving, a very kind person. Okay? He says, why don't I put aside what I want to do? Let me see what do my companions want to do, and I will do that. All right. So in that way, we are different people, but we have the same mind, same heart. And then after that, the second monk, Nandiya, he too says the same thing. Right? He says, Bhante, here we too think thus. No? Or that should be I too think thus. No? Just like the way that Anuruddhā thinks. Right? He shows loving kindness through actions, through speech, and through the mind. And then he thinks, okay, what do I set aside what I want to do and find out what the other two want to do. So you find the same thing. Kimbila replies in the same way. So these monks, they're always looking for each other. So they end up kind of doing things in consensus, in common agreement, right? So now we come to the closing line, that is this one. Bhante, this is how we all dwell in concord, in mutual joy, without disputing, blending like milk and water, looking at each other with kind eyes. So here you see this very contrasting situation. Here we have three monks meditating together, living together, really good spiritual friends. Whereas in Kosambi, this big crowd of monks are quarreling and they cannot get along with each other, right? So the Buddha is very happy in section 13, sadhu, excellent, sadhu Anuruddhā. I hope you, Anuruddhā, dwell diligent, exertive, and resolute, right? So now, after talking about they're happy together, next thing is, are they practicing, right? They should dwell diligent, exertive, and resolute. And they reply, certainly, Bhante, we dwell diligent, exertive, and resolute. And of course, the Buddha asked them, tell me what you mean. How do you all dwell diligent, exertive, resolute? Right? So here the Buddha doesn't take anything for granted. He asked them, right? And then Anuruddhā replies, here, Bhante, whoever returns first from the alms round in the village, he prepares the seats, sets up water for drinking and for washing, and sets up the refuse bin, right? So the place for throwing away the extra food and so on. Whoever returns last from the alms round in the village, if he wishes, he eats the leftovers. So notice here that they'll keep the food in the bowl that cover the bowl. So it's understood that if you come late and you get no food or very little food, there is extra food there that you can take. Or if he wishes, he would throw them away where there is no greenery, or pour them away into water where there is no life. Okay, these are Vinaya rules. Okay, you should not pour water on green plants because you'll kill the plants, the oil and so on. And not pour into water where there are living beings, also may kill them. He puts away the seeds and water for drinking and for washing. And after washing the refuse bin, puts it away and sweeps the refectory. So you can imagine here, these forest monks, they live their quarters are very neat and clean, although they live in the forest. Right? Then, whoever notices the vessels of water for drinking or for washing or for the toilet are low or empty, he sets them up, right? And here again is a hint. It is the opposite of what happens in Kosambi. In Kosambi, the monks are accusing each other of not topping up the water instead of helping each other. Right? So you see this very interesting counterpoint and contradistinction. Yeah? All right, the next part is even more interesting. 14.2. If he is unable to manage them, in other words, he can't do it, one of the monks cannot do it himself, he would signal another with his hand. And by joining hands, they set them up. Why is this so? Because they were dwelling in silence, the three of them. Imagine they were keeping the rule of silence because they are meditating, so they don't spend time chatting, you know. So even when they are working, they don't talk. They use hand signal for help, and they at once will read each other, right? Only when very necessary, like when the Buddha has approached, then they will talk, right? So this is the rule of silence, all right? They don't call this the noble silence, by the way. It's just silence. Again, noble silence is referring to your deep meditation, right? All right. So there you are, 14.3. As such, Bhante, there is no cause for us to break into speech. Only on the fifth day, okay? on every 5th day of the week, Bhante, we sit together all night discussing the Dhamma. Notice, they don't sleep. All night they talk Dhamma. Very peaceful in the night. This is how, Bhante, we dwell diligent, exhaustive, and resolute. So this is how they live together in practice. And then again, the Buddha is very impressed with them. 15. Sadhu, sadhu, Anuruddhā. But Anuruddhā, while you were dwelling thus diligent, exhaustive, and resolute, have you attained the superhuman state? Dwelling in comfort, that is the distinction in knowledge and worthy of the noble ones. So the Buddha said, okay, good. So you're living together in fellowship, but have you attained any levels? How is your meditation progress? Okay, this is where they explain to the Buddha the difficulties they face, and the Buddha gives them advice. Okay, 15.2. Okay, now we have Anuruddhā and the other monks, they are reporting. Here, Bhante, while we were dwelling diligent, exhaustive, and resolute, we perceived both light and visible vision of forms. But not long afterwards, both the light and the vision of forms disappeared, and we did not understand the cause. But Anuruddhā, said the Buddha, you should understand the cause. So here they're saying that they couldn't keep their focus. The bright light of meditation went away, and their visions of the mind object also went away. 16.2. Okay, here this is the starting of what the Buddha would list, what are called the 11 mental impurities that they have to deal with. 16.2. Anuruddhā, before I awakened to the supreme awakening, when I was still a bodhisattva, I too perceived both light and vision of forms. But not long afterwards, both light and the vision of forms disappeared. Then, Anuruddhā, it occurred to me, what now is the cause? What now is the reason that the light and the vision of forms disappeared? Then it occurred to me, doubt arose in me, and because of the doubt, my concentration fell away. When my concentration fell away, the light and the vision of forms disappeared. Now let me act so that doubt will not arise in me again, right? So the first hindrance is doubt. You say, what is this? I don't know what is this, for example, right? So now everything else repeats the same, the template is the same, so I'm not going to repeat the passage, right? The template. I'm going to repeat the keyword only, the mental impurity. Okay, number one is doubt. So you can see this one here showing this internal numbering of the item. Here's number 2. Okay, inattention, right? They didn't pay enough attention, focus to those objects, to your meditation. So that's why it fell away. Right? So that's number 2, right? Now number 3. After they are unable to do that, they became tired and sleepy. All right, sloth and torpor. So this is number 3. See, sloth and torpor arose in me, and so on. So because of that, they lost concentration. Then next, number 4 is terror. Okay, after that, they kind of they realize, oh, I've been sleepy and tired. They suddenly felt they're not progressing, and they had fear. Okay, because of not making progress, for example, fear could arise in different ways during meditation, but it distracted them. This is distraction number 4. Then after that, there was excitement. The opposite of fear, excitement, that they began to feel, say, oh, I'm going to try hard, and so on. So they became excited. Okay. Now, wait, before that, here there is something. Let's go back a bit on section 19. They said that terror arose in them. As terror arose in the Buddha. The Buddha is relating his own experience. So he's saying this is natural. This happens in meditators, right? So you got to watch it. So he gives in 19.2 the parable of the murderer's journey. Suppose, Anuruddhā, a person were to set out on the journey and murderers were to leap out from both sides of him. Terror or alarm would then arise in him on that account. So too terror arose in me. Because of terror, my concentration fell away. And because of that, he's not able to sustain his focus. No? So now he has doubt, inattention, thought and torpor, and terror. And then the next one is excitement arose. Okay. So here again, he gives another parable, the parable of the hidden treasure. Number 20.2. Okay. Suppose, Anuruddhā, a person seeking the access to hidden treasure were to find 5 excesses all at once. Excitement would arise in him on that account. So imagine if he found the 5 ways of all the 5 ways, 5 openings are found, and he's able to get to this treasure. So he's going to get very excited. Okay. So here, the Buddha say he felt excited that way too, but because of the excitement, he's not able to focus. And because of that, when you try too hard, again, you fall back to inaction. You slow down, you didn't put enough effort in. So this is the number 6. The hindrance or impurity number 6. Inertia, getting stuck, right? So after that, when we realize, oh, I'm not putting enough effort, so then you jump to putting a lot of effort. It became excessive effort, number 7. Excessive effort. Okay. Now here, the Buddha gives the middle way parable, 22.2, the quail parable. There are 2. This is relating to this particular impurity. And so here the Buddha says, suppose, Anuruddhā, a person were to hold a quail tightly with both hands. So this quail is a small bird. If you hold it too tightly, it would die then and there. So too excessive effort arose in me, and because of excessive effort, my concentration fell away, and then because of that, and all the other impurities, he could not focus. He lost the focus. No? Then the next one, 23, which is the 8th impurity. This is weak efforts. It's the opposite of the previous one. And here it's a parable of the quail again, the second parable, 23.2. Suppose, Anuruddhā, a person were to hold a quail loosely with both hands. It would then fly away, right? So you hold the bird not strong enough, you fly away. So it should be just nice, right? So once this happens, then this is called inaction, inertia. Remember, there's a famous parable in the life of the Buddha that's called the parable of the 3-string lute, right? The first string is very tight, and then the moment the player touches it, it breaks. The other one is too loose, the second string, so the sound is very, very bad, very poor. The middle one is just nicely tuned. It makes a very beautiful sound. So that's the middle way, right? So this is the hint here already. Here the Buddha mentions the various kinds of impurities. Number 9, longing, right? Then the meditator thinks, oh, how do I overcome this? I wish I can meditate, and so on. So it's thinking. This longing leads to thinking. So this number 9. Again, it gets distracted. And then number 10, you start thinking of this, thinking of that. That's called perception of diversity. Lots of thoughts and thinking of so many things, right? Getting more distracted. So this is the distraction number 10. Now the last one, excessive scrutinizing of forms. In other words, looking at too many objects or looking around, the mind is wandering around and looking at all kinds of objects in meditation, and it gets distracted. So these are the 11 kinds. No? Now, in the suttas, the commentaries call all these hindrances, all these imperfections as hindrances. So in other words, this is the early list the Buddha mentioned of what hinders a meditator, 11 of them. But later the Buddha standardized and simplified them into the 5 hindrances. Okay, and all these are categorized together in the 5 hindrances. So in your free time after the study, you can look up in the front notes, the introductory notes, how the 11 imperfection fit into the 5 hindrances that did the same thing. But here, in other words, it's an old list before the Buddha standardized them into the 5 hindrances. So now the 27, the Buddha is still relating to his early meditation before he was awakened. So he says, having noticed, having realized he has these imperfections or impurities in his meditation, he abandoned them. So they're all listed here. Here is the part where 27, the Buddha says, now Anuruddha, having understood thus, doubt is an impurity of mind, right? So everything repeats. Intention is an impurity of mind. I abandon inattention, an impurity of mind. So sloth is an impurity of mind, and so on. So in other words, all these 11 impurities, they show that the mind is not ready. So the meditator has to overcome all this, right? So by understanding what they are, by knowing they are such, taking them for what they are. So in section 30, the Buddha says, Anuruddha, when I understood thus, doubt is an impurity, I abandon doubt, and so on, all the other, and he abandons all that. In other words, he overcomes the hindrances. Now we come near the end already. Now look at 31. 30.2 actually. Look at 30.2. Anuruddha, with this it occurred to me, meaning having abandoned all the 11 imperfections or impurities, I have abandoned these impurities of mine. Let me now cultivate concentration in 3 ways. Okay, now this is the difficult part, okay, where when the Buddha is teaching the 3 monks how to deal with the difficulties in their meditation. Okay. So now if you look here, I have numbered 1, 2, 3. So these 3 ways refer to these 3. How do we know? Because these 3 things are mentioned again in the last sutta of the Digha Nikaya. Okay, in the Dasuttara Sutta, where these 3 items are mentioned. Let me read them to you. 31. Then Anuruddha, I cultivated concentration with initial application and sustained application. Initial application, vitakka. Sustained application, vichara. Okay? So vitakka, vichara refers to the first jhana. Right? So this is number 1. Yeah? And then I cultivated concentration without initial application, but with sustained application only. Okay, this is a special one, number 2. This is the one that the Buddha is telling the 3 monks, okay, you don't rush your meditation. You go into your meditation, you notice there is vitakka, there is vichara. There is initial application, the mind, directing the mind to the object, and then there is the mind staying there. Then in the next part, once you let go of one first, right? It's not easy to let go of both at the same time. Let go of one first. Let go of initial application first. Just keep watching the mind, that's all. And then the next one, I'll cultivate 3 without initial application, without sustained application. Okay, this refers to the second jhana as well as all the rest. The rest all don't have vitakka vichara, right? So now this is where the Abhidhamma, they count all these 3 as separate factors, dhyana factors. But here, if you look at this, the Buddha is simply instructing the 3 monks how to slowly progress through the dhyanas so that they can overcome their distractions and attain and reach the jhanas one by one. Okay? So it's actually, in this case, the Buddha is talking about different, the dhyana factors in different ways. He's not talking of the dhyana in a sequence 1, 2, 3, 4. He's talking about the factors of the dhyana. For example, in the first dhyana, you have initial application, sustained application, and you have zest and joy. Zest. But here the word pleasure is your satta. So again, this is an early sutta, so you find the Buddha doesn't use the terms you're familiar with. Later on, the terms become more standardized. So this shows the sutta is quite old, in that sense. Now look at this sentence 4 here. I cultivated concentration with zest, right? So zest here, now if you look at note 115, it says refers to the first or second dhyana, right? So here the Buddha is talking about not, I'm in stage 1, I'm in stage 2. We don't think like that when we meditate, right? When we meditate, we say, I'm letting go of zest, I'm letting go of joy, whatever, right? So you do it one by one, and you don't bother about what stage am I in, because then you start thinking, you see. You deal with that factor. That is why the sutta lists the factors, and not with stage 1, stage 2, because that's already names that we get caught up with. Here we are actually dealing hands-on with the meditation. Then the next one, I've cultivated concentration without zest, right? That means what? This is in the second or third dhyana, right? That is the without zest, 116. This third or fourth dhyana, sorry, zest is, we let go of zest in the third or fourth dhyana. And then I cultivated concentration accompanied with pleasure. Okay, here sukha, or in the standardized list we have sukha. So here goes back to one, either first jhana or second jhana. And then I cultivated concentration accompanied by equanimity. Right? So this is the fourth jhana actually, but you can see the beginning in the third jhana already. Okay, so here the Buddha is talking about all this practice in terms of the dhyana factors. Right? Again, you can look up the notes in dhyana factors in the introduction. So now the sutta, very close to the end, the Buddha says, when Anuruddhā, I had cultivated all this one by one in this way, overcome all the hindrances, cultivated the factors and let them go, the knowledge and vision arose in me. Okay. So this is what is that knowledge and vision? The next page. Okay. Unshakable is my liberation. This is my last birth. There is no more rebirth here for me. Okay, this is the same line mentioned in Ariya Pariyasana Sutta M26 at the end of the long description of the Buddha's awakening, right? How he awakened, all the details are given there in M26, section 18. So here the Buddha only says, then I became awakened. The Blessed One said this, satisfied, the Venerable Anuruddhā rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, right? So of course, not only Anuruddhā, all the 3 monks rejoice. Yeah? So there you are. I hope you are able to follow. You see how the Buddha taught these monks to slow down with their jhana factors, watching them, letting them go one by one, especially in the case of Vitakka Vichara, rather than two at the same time. Okay, so, and the later Abhidhammas interpret this as separate jhanas. So that's the sutta. This is where you find this sutta, the Buddha deals with spiritual friendship as well as deep meditation. So now I'll end here. We have about 20 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Brother Piya, for the Sutta teaching.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Yeah, good evening, brothers and sisters. You may type your question in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself. Ask your question verbally. Brother Piya, at the moment, there's no question in the chat box.
Okay, all right. That's great. Anytime you're ready, you can ask questions. Yeah? Meantime, you can see in the suttas, there are records of the Buddha's awakening and his teachings, right? And you begin to notice that sometimes, and often enough, the terminology are not standard. But you know what the Buddha is pointing to. For example, when the Buddha lists the 11 Upakkilesas or impurities or what do you call imperfections, depends on different translators translate differently. You find, say, oh, this looks familiar, you know. Then you find you can list them into the 5 hindrances. Right? The 5 hindrances are found in section 3.2. So number 1, sensual lust will include excitement, longing, excessive scrutinizing of forms. Ill will includes inertia or inaction. Okay? And sloth and torpor will be inattention. Of course, sloth and torpor itself included here. And then restlessness and worry include terror, excitement, excessive effort, and weak effort. And then doubt, of course, includes doubt and the perception of diversity. So you have 5 hindrances. So later on, the Buddha uses the formula of the 5 hindrances. So you see this kind of progress in the Sutta teachings over the 45 years. In some of the Sutta writings, I will draw tables, and to show you how the different doctrines develop, right? And it's very interesting to see how this happens. It's not easy, but you got to compare many things in the suttas. Okay, any questions?
Piya, there's a first question from Brother Mayak Upal.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Brother Piya. This will remain a special sutta for me. It's like coming out of darkness to light. May I ask, is loving kindness a better translation for metta than goodwill? It seems both affect the heart or feelings differently.
Yes. Yeah, translation can be quite a troubling thing. You got to really be good in the language. The thing is, we try to be as close as possible to the Buddha's teaching, to Pali, right? And language being what it is, especially English is a living language over the generations, meanings can change. So that is why there is this Miss I.B. Horner, one-time president of the Pali Text Society, once wrote to me, and she translated the Vinaya, the whole of the Vinaya. She said that every 50 years, there should be a new translation, okay? Maybe she's being quite ambitious. Usually even 100 years is okay, but to ensure that it's clear, we've got to check the translations. So this is one of the issues. Now, so far, loving kindness has been the standard translation. And it's very important that when we use a word, people accept it. And when they look at it, they can accept and say, okay, it's metta, right? You always have in mind, at the back of your mind, the Pali word. If that can be done, that'd be good. It helps. You can use goodwill if people understand that you are referring to metta. All right. So the thing about goodwill is, I think it doesn't have the impact or the fullness like loving kindness because of the word love there. See? I sometimes use the word love, in when I write something and I want to make it poetic, make it simple, make it like poetic prose. I would say love and kindness instead of love and compassion. But from the context, it refers to the 4 Brahma Viharas. So the ability to use language in this way beautifully is called Buddhist aesthetics. So in order to understand Buddhist aesthetics, you have to master some level of language, and you have to feel good and happy, inspired inside you yourself. And there is something in the Dhamma that inspires you, and then you want to express it beautifully. So this is where we don't want the words to be too long. Loving kindness is quite long, that's one thing. But then that's the best we have in prose. The other word is love, but then love has become so broad that sometimes we don't know what it covers. But in certain contexts, we know what love will mean. So if the context is clear, we can use it. So for that reason, I sometimes use provisional translation for the 4 Brahma Viharas. Now, usually for Brahma Viharas, you translate as loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, right? These are some very technical. So I thought myself, can I think of simple single sound monosyllable Anglo-Saxon words? Then I thought, okay, maybe we can use the word love, ruth, joy, peace. So they reflect the 4 Brahma Viharas. But the context is very important when you use such words. So when people read it and they read in that context, they know what you mean. So this is one of the difficulties when we translate Pali into English, right? So I would say use the word you're comfortable with, use the word that you understand, and better still, use the word that people also understand and accept, and then they know what you are referring to. So my point is, translation being what it is, there are no exact words that will translate word for word. It's not that simple. If that's possible, then we can use computers to translate Pali into English. It's not that simple. There is always a human choice. So you find there are different translations of metta by different translators, but thankfully not too many. Most of the translators agree to use loving kindness. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Father Piya. The next question from Patricia Walsh.
Sure.
Can you explain what is vision of form in meditation?
Say that again.
Can you please explain what is vision of form in meditation?
Okay. Now, what's the passage number that appeared? Yeah, I want to teach you how to read the suttas here. No? What is the passage number?
Patricia, would you like unmute yourself to?
Yeah, if you can just, no, I think you can see 16.2, there's one, quite a number of places. No? Now, my point is, look for the word, and then 15.2, you will see there are footnotes there, 92, 93, right? So if you look at footnote 92, 92 says, light here refers to the sign, nimitta, preceding the arising of dhyana. Okay, usually these notes are from the commentaries. No? And then forms, notice here it says vision of forms, note 93. And then there's a long note there telling you vision of forms. Below it says the seeing of forms with a divine eye. Here, of course, the commentary gives one aspect on it. Now, first of all, let me go to the first word. No? The first is light. When we go into, even when you do your own breath and loving kindness, when you're very focused, you have this sense of brightness in your mind, but your eyes are closed. So this is not the kind of ordinary light outside. It's your mind's clarity and joy. So that kind of light, okay? If you're not focused, this light will go away. You won't see this kind of brightness. So that's one meaning. Yeah? Now the other forms is, again, you get visions in your mind and you see pictures. You see forms, different pictures in your mind. Could be maybe a picture of the Buddha or something, some beautiful place. And again, these are mind generated. We normally don't get carried away with them. We just watch them, let them go. So this is vision of forms. They're not physical vision out there. They are visions in our minds in meditation. You see things. You see forms, right? So here we just don't get caught up with them. We let them come, we let them go. And in that way, we go back to our meditation. So here the Buddha is teaching them to overcome all those different mental impurities that make them lose touch with the actual object of their meditation by focusing on external, the less important aspects of that meditation object. In other words, there are certain things that appear in your meditation, you don't pay too much attention to them. You let go of them because they're distractions. Even when you meditate, if you get caught up and say, oh, this light is very nice, and you like this light, you'll be distracted. Simple example, right? So you know the light is there, and then just smile, and then let it go, because what you want to do is focus on your breath, focus on your loving kindness. That's the meaning here. Okay, keep your mind focused on that meditation object. Everything else, let go. Okay, that's the last few lines, a simple answer.
Thank you, Brother Piya. The next question from Brother LCO.
Sure.
Today teaching is very deep into the serious meditation, focusing method to enlightenment. If this the one way to enlightenment?
Oh, this is one way. There are many other ways. Of course, you find the Buddha will be advising another monk differently. See? Like, for example, when the Buddha advised Malunkyaputta, right? It'd be slightly different. The Buddha tells Malunkyaputta to let go of his ideas of this and that, right? So don't get caught up with logical ideas in meditation. Let go of all ideas. Free yourself from views. So it depends on the personality that who has the meditation problems. There are many, many different ways depending on the monks and meditators. So this is one of them. All right. Any other questions?
The next question from Patricia Walsh.
Sure.
Is longing in meditation the same as craving?
Yeah, it's like something like that. Not as strong as craving. In this case, the meditator probably say, "Oh, if only I could get focused," that kind of. So it's thinking. It is a thought. That's the meaning here. It's not that craving is evil or bad. It's a distraction. And once that happens, you are taken away from the object. That's the meaning. So you got to get back to focusing yourself on the meditation object. So don't get caught up too much with the words. Rather, what is the Buddha talking about here? The Buddha is talking about being distracted. Okay. All right.
All right, thank you, Brother Piya.
Mm-hmm.
The next question from Patricia Walsh.
Okay.
What exactly is meant by noble silence?
Oh, okay. Noble silence refers to a deep meditation when there's no more speech. Now, if not mistaken, it's the second jhana, right? When Vitakka Vichara is all settled, all right? So once normal Vitakka, because Vitakka Vichara precedes language, all right? You think and you focus and then you talk. So once Vitakka Vichara goes away, it's noble silence. In other words, language don't trouble you anymore. There's no more mental chatting. All right? The mind's at peace. You notice even now, you find there's a voice in your head talking, telling you things, right? And suddenly you find there's so many voices, especially when you are having a problem, So there's the inner chatting, and sometimes this chatting will disturb you in your meditation. So you want to clear that away through the practice of loving kindness. So noble silence is the mind free from language, very peaceful. It's like you are in this beautiful lake. That's why I like to go to this Jurong Lake, and the water is so peaceful, and you sit there, you feel wonderful, right? Even when sometimes we go on Saturdays, there are lots of people coming to the park also. They can be very noisy, So you just focus on the peacefulness of the lake, and you feel this wonderful place. So noble silence refers to the inner silence of meditation when language is suspended, words are suspended, pure, joyful, underline joy, joyful silence. Okay.
Thank you, Brother Piya. The next question from Brother LC.
Yes.
It seemed to me that Buddha have been constantly using three levels in practicing, from delight to not delight, and then to does not delight, and finally understanding the root, thereby to deliberation. Hence, if we are able to focus on these three methods of level practice, we are able to reach objective of enlightenment. Is my knowing correct?
But this is what he says in the sutta. He says what happened when he was meditating. You know, he overcome all the 5 mental hindrances, and it is a method he used to slow down his meditation by gradually letting go, step by step. If you use the word letting go of defilements and views step by step, I would say yes. Okay. So, but remember, different suttas, the context is different. Here, the Buddha is talking to these 3 monks, but he's referring to the incident in his own life. So perhaps, yes, that could be right in his own practice, that is. Okay. But remember, although the Buddha uses this method, for other monks, they may not need to do this method. They could have their own way of doing it because they got different problems, different difficulties, so they have to overcome those difficulties. So that there are always personal aspect of practice. We've got to allow that too. All right? Okay, any more questions?
There's no more question at the moment.
Okay, we have about 4 more minutes. We'll just let time pass. Anytime you have a question, you can, some question that trouble you in the past, you can also ask.
Ante,
Yes.
just an observation from the balance of the teaching today. We started with a group of monks who were quarreling.
Yes.
Over mundane things, and set out the teaching, and then to the East Deer Park and reaffirm his teaching to these 3 people, and showing us the balance of how powerful this teaching is. And I think this is projected very, very powerfully tonight.
Yes, you can. The contrast is amazing. Yeah, you can see the worldly crowd, and then here you see this 3 monks living peacefully in the forest and meditating, doing quite the opposite of what the crowd is doing. That contrast is amazing. Sometimes we miss these little things, you know. So when you really do notice all this in the suttas, right? These are what make the sutta beautiful, and you notice you feel a certain sense of happiness and joy inside you. And of course, if you have the time and inclination, you know, as we grow older, we have less friends and more time, and it's a great thing, you know, to be able to write all these things. Now, the funny thing is that at my age now, although I'm supposed to have more time, actually, there's so much to write on the Dhamma. There appears to be less time, right? So, for example, at the end of this sutta in a few minutes, the sutta class, I'll be very happy. I say, oh, I can get back to my writing, right? So you find I've been writing quite a lot of essays, reflecting on the nature of experience and so on. And here it's like writing my memoirs about the Dhamma. I'm putting together all these ideas, and I'm getting different people proofreading them. I divided them up into 20 chapters. And it's very interesting to be able to share this with others. And I know these people, when they're reading it, they'll say, wow, this is interesting. I never read this like this before. So you begin to see how the Buddha explains the nature of experience, how we perceive, how we conceive, and how suffering arises. And this is what I'm writing about right now. When I finish with you today, tomorrow, day after, I'll be writing about how all this experience actually lead to the arising of suffering. And you see this so simple in a psychological form. You're amazing. So how did I notice all this before? And this is a celebration of my 20th year of Sutta translation. I'm so happy I'm able to see this and write this down and share this with you. All right. Okay. Any more questions? Or are we ready to end here?
Yes. There's another question from that was Piya.
Yeah, please.
There a reason Buddha is telling 3 times to stop quarreling?
Oh, yeah. Traditional India, 3 times usually. I've not found the exact reason why 3 times, but as you know, your Buddha Dhamma Sangha is 3, so kind of triad, and 3, and this is quite common elsewhere. You get 3 warnings and 3, people tell you 3 times. First time is statement, and second time repeat to make sure that you know what it is, and the last one is okay, you better do it. So it's a kind of like it's a natural way of telling people that not to forget something which is important or which is dangerous even, that we should heed, right? So the Buddha, in a sense, is saying he means it. He says it 3 times, Sometimes there is 2 times. On rare occasion, there are 4 times. There's once. If you look up in the Dictionary of Early Buddhism, the one that I compiled, you look under Chatutta, 4th time, I think there is a mention there. But usually it's 3 times. Okay, so that we don't forget. Okay, any other questions?
Okay, can we take photo first?
Yes, okay. Photos on, please.
Turn on your videos.
All right, turn on your videos so you can see you all. And this is the human side of the gathering, right? You are like devas here, no? 33 today, right? 7 of the 33, no? Okay, smile. Weekend smile. After this, you have nice weekend. I like today's class because tomorrow is Saturday. All right. Okay, that's wonderful. Yes.
Kelvin, do you have a video camera? And Ying? Who is Ying? I don't know this person.
Yeah,
do you have a video or not, please?
Yeah, please use your full name. No?
Right. Okay. Kelvin, hello.
Yes, welcome.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Oh, I noticed there are 2 videos.
It's okay. It's good to have 2 videos.
Okay, that's good. All right.
Yes.
Okay, we take a video now. Smile.
Yes.
Okay, one more time. Smile. Okay, thank you.
Sadhu. Okay. So no more last minute questions, huh?
There's a thank you statement from Brother LC.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. The
Yeah.
list of the suttas and all of your writing have helped me, especially to the true learning. Thank you very much again. And we are like scientists going through the science of life.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. Sadhu. Okay, let us spend a quiet time now to close this wonderful session. We have gathered once again to listen to the Buddha Dhamma. We have recited the precepts, the 3 refuges, the precepts. We also have done some meditation, and then we listen to the Dhamma. Oh, wonderful Dhamma practices. Remember this day, remember this moment of peace and wonderful keeping to the Dhamma. This will help you in your future practices. And this is the time when we send out our loving kindness to our loved ones, to our teachers, even to the people living nearby us, our near and dear ones, that they may be well and happy. And that each of you will be well and happy too, so that you can keep up with the Sutta study and grow in wisdom and happiness. And finally, let us show our gratitude to the three jewels, the Buddha, our teacher, the Dhamma, his teaching, and the Sangha, the noble ones who follow the path that we too aspire to follow. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Bow down. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Bow down. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Bow down. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.